Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Why. This week we have Parsha Chayei Sarah. Chayei Sarah in Hebrew means the life of Sarah, but strangely enough, the Parsha actually begins with the death and burial of Sarah. So again, that's an entire discussion into itself as to why it's called that. But I want to address today the death of Sarah itself. Now, the end of last week's Parsha, Vayera, we had the binding, often incorrectly called the sacrifice of Isaac, but he wasn't sacrificed, that's the point. It was the binding of Isaac. Of course, just to refresh your memory, Abraham took him up as a command to God. He was told to sacrifice him at the last moment. Just before he was going to do it, God said, oh, no, it was a test. Fine. Again, if you want more info on that, please contact me through the channel. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But in terms of here, the answer about the death of Sarah. The commentators recognize the connection between last week's Parsha with the binding of Isaac and the death of Sarah at the beginning of this one. In the Midrash, the Jewish homily says that Sarah died as a result of the shock of hearing about the supposed death of Isaac, although he wasn't killed. Different versions. One of them said the Satan, basically the Satan, told Sarah, he was telling Sarah what happened and saying that, your husband took Isaac up and he was about to sacrifice him, and he was telling the story, and then Sarah died of shock, and so that's what happened. And so there's a couple ideas behind this. Is that one, just to backtrack here, we have Abraham. God told him, put him through all these tests. Jewish tradition says he was put through 10 tests, culminating, including, of course, circumcision of himself at the age of 99, culminating in being told to sacrifice his own son. He does all of this without question, okay? What happens at the end? At the end, he does what God wants, and then he comes back and he finds out that his wife has been killed. I mean, is this really the reward befitting a man who has done everything God asked him to do without question? Certainly not. There's a problem here. And I think what the idea here is that the lesson for us is that Abraham, throughout the Torah, we're told that there is a reward and punishment system. That when you fulfill the commandments, God will reward you. When you do not, God will punish you. Now, again, there are certainly our own examples in our lives. We see people who fulfill the commandments, who are good, righteous, holy, religious Jews, and they don't seem to have easy lives, and of course, vice versa. And here in the Torah itself, we have so many cases of this. Here, of course, Abraham, he wasn't a Jew, it was before that, but still we had Abraham who was basically doing everything God asked, and he's going through all these tests after test after test, and his own wife died. And I think the lesson for us is that when we approach growth, and when I say growth, I mean that connection with God, that closeness to God, when we approach that from the perspective of a spreadsheet like an accountant, we look at it from, I did A and God owes me A. I did B, God owes me B. We're obviously missing the whole point. And so what this lesson is supposed to teach us is that, yes, of course, there is a reward and punishment. If we're doing good things, of course there's going to be reward, and of course there's going to be punishment. However, that's not necessarily discernible to us. So what that means is that Abraham did everything that God asked him to do, and yet he was not, at least seemingly, he wasn't rewarded. Now, of course, his reward later comes from basically being the progenitor of 4.5 billion people in the world today. We have, 3 great monotheistic religions comprising more than half the world's population who say Abraham taught us truth. Abraham taught us monotheism, the existence of one God. So Abraham never lived to see this. This was long after Abraham died, he only saw his reward. And that's the point. And I think the idea that we have to take away from this is that we can't lose the perspective that there is a reward and punishment, but we're not always going to see it. And that's frustrating, and it seems like a cop-out, but it is the truth. It is very easy to be able to say, reward right now, if I do A, God gives me A. But, that cheapens the entire experience. The entire experience of living as a human with free will is that it can't be that obvious to us. We have to have that choice. And if, of course, every time we reach for bacon, our arm melted off, or every time we did something good, $100 would appear in front of us, that's a mockery. That's just, it's just silliness. And so the idea here is, of course, that Abraham, despite these different challenges, maintained his conviction that God was just. And, of course, later on, of course, his reward did come. And, of course, if we approach this and growth from the perspective of reward and punishment. If I do A, then God owes me A. It's totally flawed. Totally flawed. Because, of course, last thing we want to do is for God to start making a list of all the things we've done that are bad and start sending us the bill for that. So the idea is that if we approach every gift that we have, every amount of money that we have, every friend we have, our friends, our spouse, our job, our health, money, everything that we have, if we approach every single thing as a gift and a reward that was totally undeserved, not only are we, I think, closer to that kind of level of appreciation that is required of us, but there's no question that we're going to be much, much happier as a result. The unhappiest people are the people who think something is coming to them. And the happiest people are those who think that every single thing they get is a gift from above. So that's it for Parsha Chayei Sarah. Best wishes, Shabbat Shalom. God bless.